This next one is by Nava Tehillah, a group from Israel that we had come here before. The words come from Psalm 98, a psalm that we sing on Friday nights. Neharot yimcha uchaf.
Hiram
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
We're still celebrating Israel. And so we had some beautiful, thank you, Ben, for some fun time singing along with some Israeli favorites. We're going to continue with another psalm from Shabbat, Psalm 93, and this is Mikolot Maim Rabim. So we have a slide for that one. There it is.
Shabbat Shalom. It's so nice to be with you virtually still, but yet we can feel your presence come into our sacred sanctuary wherever you are across the globe. It's a delight to have you join us for sacred worship. I invite you to take a deep breath and let it out one more time. Think about something joyful that happened in your life this week, even if it was just a small moment. If you're following along in our prayer book, we'll call out the pages. If you're not following along, no problem. Just embrace the words and the spirit of Shabbat. We kindle our Sabbath lights on page 2 or 120 of our prayer book, and it's an honor to invite Eli Sobel, as well as his family, who I see there on the Zoom, to join us in kindling our Sabbath lights.
All right, why should I begin?
There we go. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Invite Eli to lift up that Kiddush cup in front of him. We're on page 5 or 123 as he leads us in the sacred, joyous words of Kiddush.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav, Beratza v'anu, b'shabbat kocho, v'hava ufratzonim filanu, zikara lema'aseh bereshit, kihu yom tehila, lemikra kodesh, zecher l'tziat mitzrayim, kivanu b'charta, v'tanu kidasha, mikol ha'amim, Shabbat Kodesh, Be'ahavat u'vrasa, Nihaltanu, Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat.
Amen. L'chaim.
L'chaim, Eli, Mazel Tov. It's a delight to have you as the newest teacher of Torah in our community. And congratulations to your whole family, whether they're with you or across the country, for this special simcha in their lives. Turn to page 20 or 138 for the words of Lecha Dodi. We'll sing verses 1, 2, 5, and 9. like and you're able, I invite you to rise for the words of the Baruch Hu, which are on page 28 or 146. If you're happy in your couch, that's fine with me too, and we'll sing together. The words of Roll Into Dark, our evening prayer before we sing the Shema, are on the slide in front of you. The words of the Shema are on page 34 or 152. We sing together.
Adonai can be seated. Continue on page 36 or 154. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם, ושבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם אלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם emet. Continue with our song of freedom, our song that represents that first step that really was the first step on the true journey to the promised land, the land of Israel. Mi Chamocha on page 40 or 158. We're singing this to the tune of Eretz Zavat Chalav Udvash, the land flowing with milk and honey.
All right, let's give this a go. Here we are. All right. Adonai et Yaakov, u'ge'alom yad chazak mimenu, Baruch atah Adonai, Gal Yisrael.
On page 42 or 160, we continue with our prayer for peace and shelter. We pray that God spread over us the shelter of God's peace and God's presence and God's shelter and strength. Hashkivenu, page 42 or 160.
Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu Shalom, Ne'omidenu Shomreinu Lechaim. Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu Shalom, Ne'omidenu Shomreinu
page 46 or 164, we lift ourselves up physically and spiritually as we turn to the opening verse of the Amidah, the standing prayer. Prayer that God open our lips, that whatever words we utter may be words of praise. So we'll begin together on page 46 and sing the first few blessings together and have some time for our own private meditation.
Adonai Satai Tivta. Adonai Satai Tivta. Ufiagi Tilatecha. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el HaGadol, HaGibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomer Chasadim Tovim, Vekonei Hakol, V'zocher Chasdei Avot v'Imahot, U'mevi Geula Livnei V'neihem, Leman Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer u'Moshiach u'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham ve'ezrat Sarah.
50 or 168.
Atah gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechayei hakol atah Rav le'hoshia, Morid hatah, Mechalkel chayim bechesed, Mechayei hakol berachamim rabim, Tzomech noflim v'rofech olim, Umatir asurim, Umekayem emunato lishenei afar, Michamocha bal gevurot, U'idom melech, Melech memit u'mechayeh, U'matzmiach Yeshua, B'ne'eman atal hachayot hakol, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechayeh hakol.
52, 170.
Atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh,
וקדושים בכל יום יהללו חסלה. Baruch atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh.
We take a few moments now for our own private prayer.
All right, we're on page 347. Okay. Yeah, or 651, depending on which pages you like. This is not Israel's anthem, but it has sort of become like their national anthem. Al Kol Eleh. Al hadvash ve'al ha'oketz, al hamar ve'hamatok, al biteinu ha'tinoket, shmorei li hatov. Al ha'esh ha'mevoeret, al ha'mayim hazakim, al ha'ish hashav habayta min ha'merkachim. Al kol eileh, al kol eileh, shmor na li hatov. Al hadvash ve'al ha'oketz, al hamar ve'hamatok.
page 253 or 371. We turn to words of healing, healing of body or of spirit, healing with physical ailments or mental ailments. Whatever afflicts us, we pray for strength and comfort and healing. This week in particular, we're thinking of David Baruch ben Simona, Mason Easley, Kathy Hess, Arlene Gilliland, Dorothy Huppert, Moritz Huppert, Marvin Jones, Bernice Leader, and Bob Silver. As we prepare for this prayer, I also invite you to say aloud those who you're thinking of, the names of those who you're thinking of. Speak their names into the room so that they know and you know that you're sending these prayers to them.
Journey with me for a moment to the 5th of ER 5708. 73 years ago today. Join me in Tel Aviv and enter a basement of a rather nondescript building on Rothschild Street. It's a building many of you know, Independence Hall. Listen to the words of David Ben-Gurion as Shabbat approaches with attack impending from a clandestine location. The words crackle on Kol Yisrael, the voice of Israel.
אקריא לפניכם את מגילת היסוד של מדינת ישראל, אשר אושרה בקריאה ראשונה על ידי מועצת העם. בארץ ישראל קם העם היהודי, בה עוצבה דמותו הרוחנית, הדתית והמדינית, בה חי חיי קוממיות ממלכתית, בה יצר נכסי תרבות לאומיים וכלל אנושיים, והוריש לעולם כולו את ספר הספרים הנצחי.
Ben-Gurion said, Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel, was the birthplace of the Jewish people. Here their spiritual, religious, and political identity was shaped. Here they first attained statehood, created cultural values of national and universal significance, and gave to the world the eternal book of books. Even then, just a minute ago, I got chills listening to the recording. The longing of the Jewish soul for millennia has led to this moment. Not since the days of the Maccabees have the Jewish people governed their land, and it's been 1,878 years since the destruction of the Second Temple. Going to Independence Hall in Tel Aviv is bare and poignant, and yet it pulls at my heartstrings. Everything I love about Israel is encapsulated in this moment. The grainy audio. If we were there, you'd see a picture of Theodore Herzl on the wall. They say Shehechianu and sing Hatikva. This week at Beth Am and around the globe, we celebrate Yom Ha'atzmaut, Israeli Independence Day, a chance to delight in the miracle of the modern state of Israel. 73 years old. Pause a moment to think about the United States 73 years after the signing of her Declaration of Independence. The year was 1849. Hundreds of thousands of seekers headed west towards California looking for prosperity and gold. Zachary Taylor was inaugurated as the 12th President of the United States. Harriet Tubman escaped slavery at a plantation near the Chesapeake Bay and started the Underground Railroad. We had just concluded a nearly 2-year war with Mexico. Some of you may remember that moment 73 years ago. Our hearts were transported to Eretz Yisrael. After the horrors of Europe, the 2,000-year-old hope of the nation, Lihiot Am Chovshi Be'artzenu, realized. Others of you, no doubt, have crafted their own connection with Israel over the years. Teen trips or travels with Beth Am, visit to kibbutzim, maybe associations with tech companies in Startup Nation, or a love of Israeli cinema or movies or music or cookbooks. We continue to cultivate that relationship with Israel individually and at Beth Am. Last week, Rabbi Morrison outlined an exciting new partnership with a progressive community in the hills outside of Jerusalem. Building a connection with the land of Israel is an essential commandment dating back to biblical times. Rashi, the 13th century French rabbi, comments on the book of Exodus. Rashi says, we should not consider the land as part of an inheritance from the patriarchs. Rather, we should consider the land as being directly given from God to each of us today. According to Rashi, Israel is not an inheritance, like an estate or a house, which may be valuable but not sacred. Rather, Rashi emphasizes that God gives the land to each of us at this very moment. It is incumbent on each of us to connect to the land immediately, today, B'yom. Abraham Ibn Ezra echoes Rashi's reading of Exodus, noting that the land was not given only to the ancestors, but also given to every subsequent generation. As diaspora Jews, this is often a difficult task, to feel that we are connected to this strange land far away. I know each year in our Introduction to Judaism class at Beth Am, one of the biggest tensions, and it's a healthy tension, surrounds building a personal connection to Israel. It's a challenge. As a community, we embrace the words of Ben Gurion in the Declaration of Independence, believing that Israel is our lifeblood, a sacred holy land. Yet, we firmly believe that diaspora Judaism is bold and vibrant and has much to offer the world. We know that most of our history has been outside of the land. We received the Torah outside of the land of Israel. As a people, we've used texts and festivals and Shabbat to enable us to survive for millennia in exile. We believe Am Yisrael, the people of Israel, exists without a nation state. And we know that strong diaspora Jewry is good for the Jews. Many of us can imagine no place safer to prosper and thrive than the United States. For those new to Judaism or to Jewish life, or many in a younger generation who have no memory of the Six-Day War or peace with Egypt and Jordan, or of Yitzhak Rabin, building that connection is even more challenging. Most of the Israelis we know, especially if we live in Silicon Valley, grew up in America. We know our Jewish practice is more accepted here than it is in Israel. I know many Jews of younger generations who say, the issue is just too muddled and difficult. Emotions flare up. I'm torn in multiple directions. I'll never know enough. I do not want to subject myself to attack. Other people are more passionate and loud than I am, so I'm sitting out Israel. I'm not proud of that fact, but I am. This is especially true on college campuses, where a few loud voices often dominate the conversation and present no room for personal questioning or hesitation or searching. We need to say, it's okay to love Israel and feel confused or frustrated by Israel at the exact same time. It's healthy to ask tough questions about peace and politics. It's okay to be skeptical of the Israeli government and be deeply concerned about Israeli democracy. 4 elections in 2 years cannot be a good thing. As Jews, we must face up to the internal problems within Israeli society and the ugliness that sometimes characterizes Israeli behavior. Racism directed at Israeli Arabs and other minority groups, economic inequities, hostility towards women, and religious intolerance. We should be appalled by radical settlers who seek to wreak havoc and undermine the army, the government, and democracy. Most importantly, our hearts should break at the decades-long suffering of innocent Palestinians who live under brutal occupation and the pain and loss and humiliation they endure. A willingness to deeply engage and to be honest about the Israel we love is an essential part of maintaining that bond between Israel and the diaspora. The more we approach Israel from varied angles, the richer our engagement with Israel becomes and enhances the unseverable link between the Jewish people and the land of Israel. In the words of Lisa Grant and Ezra Koplowitz, struggling with Israel is not a middle-of-the-road compromise. It's a spark-flying, technicolor, ongoing interchange of ideas and passions. But it's Israeli Independence Day, and I'd be remiss to not share my own personal connection to Israel. I took my first trip to Israel with Nifty after my confirmation class. After high school, I lived in Israel on a gap year, Yehuda Hatzair, Young Judea. I lived in Carmiel, a development town in the Galilee, working with Ethiopian immigrants. I volunteered at Kibbutz Yahel, the Reform Movement's charter kibbutz, working with drip irrigation systems in the pomelo fields on the Jordan-Israel border. Since then, I've staffed 2 birthright trips and taken part in a Christian Jewish seminary student pilgrimage. I spent a year living in Jerusalem as a first-year rabbinical student, and a summer in Tel Aviv with Aaron taking Hebrew classes and strolling on the beach. 2 years ago, as a rabbi at Beth Am, I led a honeymoon Israel trip of 20 Bay Area couples to Israel over Hanukkah. I plan on doing so again post-pandemic. I love the country of Israel. I love the Shvil Yisrael, Israel's Appalachian Trail, that goes from the Red Sea all the way to the Lebanon border. 600 miles of changing terrain from forest to desert. I love Hapoel Yerushalayim, my favorite Israeli basketball team, always finishing second to perennial powerhouse Maccabi Tel Aviv. I love shtisel and shakshuka. Friday afternoon in the old city of Jerusalem, where Christian pilgrims and Jews preparing for Shabbat mix with the Muslim call to prayer. I love the freshwater oasis of Ein Gedi, right above the Dead Sea, where thousands of years ago, the biblical David took refuge from King Saul. My favorite holiday in Israel is Tu B'Shvat, when the first blossoms of the almond tree appear throughout the land. I love the pears and the grapefruits in the market, the Hebrew and Arabic of the street signs, the lively blend of secular and religious culture, the oceans and the forests, the metropolitan Tel Aviv, and the remote desert kibbutzim. The Israel I love has nothing to do with the political analysis of the media. If you want that, you know where to get it. I know the country I love has flaws and warts, but it's mine. It's ours. And it's an essential part of our identity as Jews. I also know we have different visions of Israel, different visions of how to bring peace and what a Jewish state should be. If you're hesitant or ambivalent or uncertain or just don't know, no problem. We want you to engage too. We'd love to chat with you, any of the clergy. Questions, discomfort, a quest to learn more, these are good qualities in the Jewish spirit and the Israeli conversation. One of the founders of the Reform movement, a man who both loved the ideal of a Jewish homeland and understood the importance and the centrality of the diaspora Judaism, was Rabbi Stephen Wise, who wrote about Israel, or the land of Israel, in a pre-1948 trip to Palestine. Rabbi Wise said, "Nowhere in Palestine did I find a moment's forgetfulness of the centrality and primary truth that the business of dwellers in and restorers of Israel was to build a future, to make that future conform to the best in the Jewish past and create a new best and new nobleness in the Jewish future. Let that continue to be our calling. 73 years. Yom Ha'atzmaut Sameach."
Yasher Koach. We continue our service with Aleinu L'Shabeach on page 282 or 586. And if you would like, please rise.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'Adon hakol, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא.
Page 287, 591.
ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו
We prepare for the prayer of memory on page 290 or 594. It is a fearful thing to love what death can touch, a fearful thing to love, hope, dream, to be and oh to lose. A thing for fools this, and a holy thing to love. For your life has lived in me, your laugh once lifted me, your word was gift to me. To remember this brings a painful joy. 'Tis a human thing, love, a holy thing. to love what death has touched. As I say the name of your loved one, if you'd like to rise in their honor, please do, before we say Kaddish together. This week, the Bethlehem community mourns the loss of our member, Esther Rose Macauer, wife of Jordan, sister of Stephen Jacob Rothman, mother of our member Joshua Macauer, mother-in-law of Jennifer, mother of Jennifer Lynn Macauer, mother-in-law of Josh, and David Macauer, mother-in-law of June, and grandmother of Gabrielle, Jessica, Joseph, Kayla, Leah, Zachary, and Rachel. We're observing Shloshim, the first 30 days of mourning, for Ruth Tarnopolsky, Sylvia Klein, Edith Kessler, Vera Gordon, and Ethel Weiner. And we remember those whose yahrzeit, whose anniversary of death fall this week: Joseph Ben Natan, Herbert Bernstein, Nathan Besson, Newton Boygan, Lou Blitz, Avram Blumrosen, Roberta Borovoy, Max Breaker, Paul W. Brown, Avram Budak, Milton Cohen, Jerry Cooper, Marion Diller, Mel Elliott, Evelyn Ettinger, Arnold Ettinger, Falk Finkelberg, Celia Fish, Evelyn Fries, Galila Goali, Patricia Gordon, Herman Gordon, Isidore Gutzeit, Ethel Hellman, Dorothy Hirsch, Samuel Jacobs, Leah Janklow, Martin Kaplan, Bernie Karpoff, Edna Bernice Katz, Paul Klink, Maryasa Koteliar, Ray Kronik, Gita Kurland, Sarah Lehman, Sylvia Lerman, Morton Levinson, Louis Benjamin Levy, Ruth Lobel, Donald Mann, Hyman Mencher, Edward Mermelstein, Uri Mary, Lev Minkin, Myrna Mitchner, Sandy Middleman, Mary Jane Morrison, Joseph Nabutovsky, Lillian Naiman, Stanley Newman, Jakob Nisim, Sylvia Ogus, Paul Orm, Leah Pullman, Pearl Press, Martin Rappaport, Harry Rich, Judy Rosenthal, Ted Sachs, Mel Sadoff, Rose Shine, Louis Schneider, Gerald Schuler, Alexander Silver, Stephen Simon, Joseph Skirpin, Edward Steinberg, Alwyn Steinfeld, Sylvia Louise Wasserman, Maxwell Weinberg, Abe Weiss, and Barry Wessler. There are others that you are missing tonight. You can say their names aloud and rise as we turn to page 294 or 598 for the words of Mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah. Be'alma divra chirute v'amlich malchute. B'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chaye dechol beit Yisrael. Ba'agala ubizman kari v'imru amen. Yehei shemei Rabbah mevarach leolam ulalmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shemei dukudsha b'richu. La'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, damiram be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom v'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. I'd like to remind you of our tzedakah recipient this month. We are accepting donations for the Day Worker Center of Mountain View, which is a nonprofit organization serving communities surrounding Mountain View, Los Altos, and Sunnyvale. Established in 1996 by leaders from local businesses, churches, and the community, the center provides job matching services for hundreds of local homeowners and businesses annually. Working low-wage jobs with an uncertain number of hours, many people who visit the Day Worker Center are already the most vulnerable members of our community. I invite you to learn more about the Day Worker Center on our website. You can make a donation there, or you can send a check to the office. Also a reminder that you are welcome to join Beth Am Friends after the service in the foyer, along with Rabbi Prosnit. And in honor of Yom Ha'atzmaut, I think everyone should speak Hebrew. You can practice? No? Oh, all right, maybe not. But please join us. And we will close our service with the words of Adon Olam, page 321 or 625. This is an interesting and dramatic piece. Hold on to your hats.
I know, this could be my very favorite Israeli melody of all of them. This one. So
This
sing along.
one.
Here we go. Adon Olam, Asher Malach, Terem Mos, Etzir Nivra, Ein Nasa, Echer Tovot, Azai Melech, Shemo Nikra.
Doesn't Rabbi Wattenmaker could look like an angel right there?
He
Can
really
we see
does.
Rabbi Wattenmaker
Can we
one
have
more
him
time?
back?
Look, it looks like an angel with the light coming
really
on.
does.
Just the right moment in the day.
Oh, look at that. Our angelic
beautiful.
rabbi
I glow.
who says angels aren't part of Judaism. So.
All right, let's say our motzi. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Cantor is you're gonna play us out, right?
Maybe a song about angels.
I'll call Yisrael. Sorry, everyone.